Bongos. You can't beat starting with bongos. I'm Lorne Balfe. I'm the composer from Mission Impossible, Fallout. And I'm going to try to give an insight into the whole process of scoring this amazing film. So this whole introduction, there's a lot of musical elements here. So the bongos was something I think I started recording maybe about 6 months before the end of the movie. And we had a lot of bongos. I think we had 12 bongo players, which is 11 more than you normally do on a recording session. And we recorded the bongos at Air Studios in London, in a massive cathedral. It was really fantastic. Then this piece here is called Love's Reduced. And this string piece was really the beginning of my relationship with Mission Impossible. And we'll start hearing it in quite a few places, and I'll explain to you how that started. The idea came up during breakfast with Chris, weirdly enough. Anyway, that will be discussed later. This coming up was possibly the hardest scene to write.
Fate whispers to the warrior.
And I now, after doing it quite a few times, I now understand why.
I am the storm.
So this is our first introduction to the famous mission theme. Very subtle. Didn't want to make it too obvious. So this scene was just a very hard scene. I think we scored it 3 times. That's not writing it. Writing it,
Good evening, Mr.
I lost count how many times I wrote it. But it's the mission briefing scene
His absence from
is
stage has had unintended consequences.
probably one of the most important scenes in all of the movies.
Wreak havoc around the globe.
You're getting a lot of information, and it really sets the tone for the rest of the movie. So we tried several versions. I wrote a version that was very atonal, with no melody, no music, no harmonic structure, and no pulse.
Even greater threat.
And
Responsible for the recent smallpox outbreak.
it's weird. You have to watch. You have to get through the whole movie to understand the movie.
The epidemic
So every time we watched it, you go back to it again and change the tone, and it's just, yes, this is the beginning of your movie. So it was a very difficult one.
John Lark, author of this apocalyptic manifesto calling for the destruction of the current world order. It is believed Lark is responsible for the
It's also
of Norwegian nuclear weapons.
weirdly thinking about that beginning
Dr. Delbrook's security clearance was revoked.
over the title cards. That again had, I wrote that a few times, and the version that we had until the last minute was very atmospheric. And weirdly, we kind of went back to the first ever idea we had a long time ago. And again, it's the bongos. And I think that Mission is just, it's got one of the most famous themes, I think, in culture. You've obviously got Star Wars themes. The Mission Impossible theme is part of worldwide dialogue. It's in commercials. People can make jokes about being against the clock, and as soon as you hear that famous piece of music, you automatically know you're in Mission Impossible. And
good luck, Ethan.
There we go again.
In 5 seconds.
So again, that subtle hint of it, and it's just changing one note. Now this theme here. So again, ba-da-ba, da-da-ba. That is the second phrase of the original Mission Impossible theme. And I think that I can freely talk here because there's no music, so I will take over. I think this whole process started over breakfast. I was very fortunate in getting a meeting with Chris, and we talked over breakfast, quite a few breakfasts, about the movie. And the truth is, I think I went and wrote my guts out. I've always loved the franchise of Mission Impossible. I've always loved Chris's films, and I think after the second meeting or the third meeting, I locked myself away in the studio for 2-3 weeks, and I wrote, and I just thought there is a lot of mileage with this iconic theme that's just never been touched on. And Chris had talked a lot about wanting a new approach to the music and not necessarily wanting it to feel like the TV show. This movie is far different than Rogue. It's just a different tone. It's different colours. It's shot differently.
I have survived in this business with the help
Tom's
of my
character, is just far more. I think you see a different side to him than we did in the other movies, and I think that musically we had to delve into that, and not necessarily by writing new themes. So I think everything thematically we've done with this score is so connected to the original. It may be presented in a more modern style, but the DNA is all from the original show. So yes, I wrote my guts out, and that first piece over the wedding scene, "Love's Reduced," that was something that will feature in the forthcoming scenes, and was something that Chris and Eddie started working with and placing it in other scenes.
inside the core.
We're about to get into some bongo action very soon.
That's them. The money? Money.
Again, another very difficult scene to score. You don't want music to take over. There's a lot of information happening. And probably wrote it again quite a few times.
We're gonna need that money, Luther. Kill them.
I got it! Luther, do you copy? Luther! Luther, come in.
Luther's not here right now. What can the apostles do for you?
So that was our gang of 12 bongo players going for it.
Benji, get the car.
And they're about to feature again.
Benji, get the car.
So we recorded. They're playing it not as one normally would, where we're using bamboo sticks. So all of them are playing bamboo sticks, and then in some of the other cues, they're playing with hands or they're playing with drumsticks. And it just again has a slight 60s feel, but there's something tribal or larger about it. So that was a lot of fun. And as a failed percussionist drummer that I am, anything to do with getting people banging drums, I love.
I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2,
Luther. Sorry.
3.
So again, back to one of our action motifs. Which is going to be featured in the latter reels.
We're good.
Now, also throughout that scene, we've been having a little hint
I should be dead.
of our
We should all be dead.
soon-to-be baddie theme.
Why aren't we?
There's ba-boom. I believe you're about to hear it now. There.
It's gone.
If you're just joining us, 3 massive
So this, it's not quite an octave jump, but this bass motif, ba-boom, is our, which we came to call it our baddie theme throughout the movie. And it's actually part of the famous plotting theme from the TV show. So it's the same DNA. Now back to this piece of music, which we all refer to it as the Love's Reduced theme, mainly because the way I had written it was this piece of music was called Loves, because the way Chris talked about Tom's character in this show during one of our breakfast meetings was about the emotions of this journey that he's about to go through. So I wrote this piece called Loves, and then he felt it was a bit too big. So I started removing piano from it. I had some more melody in it. And then because of that, it was much simpler. So I just called it Reduced. So it's Love's Reduced. So that is, it's probably the backbone
We read the manifesto. We found
to a lot of the film. And unfortunately, this is one of the rare scenes with not much known music, which as a composer I like, which is probably odd, but silence is golden.
When they read this manifesto, they'll understand.
Nobody's going to read that manifesto, ever. I can promise you that.
What day is it? It'll never be.
It's weird sometimes when you're looking at a scene, you always have to pinch yourself. Because normally when writing, there's no music there. One of the amazing things about this project has been Chris does not use temp music. Temp music is music from other films or albums that they put into the movie and edit with to create a tone. And he never uses temp. So anytime I watched this movie, there was absolutely nothing.
Why the suffering goes on?
And I started writing suites,
What if we make
not to picture, but with just conversations with Chris. And
Give me 5 minutes.
Eddie and Chris were able to edit it, put it in different scenes. So we created our own temp. But yeah, what's always something you have to pinch yourself is when you're watching a scene like this, or you're thinking, okay, I've got to start writing. You do. It is pretty amazing. You have Tom Cruise on the screen and you're writing to it.
think of the greater good,
It's
please?
amazing. And I think it's one of his best performances. It's another level, this movie. So here, this was something that
No, it won't quite.
originally it was not played this way.
If we read the manifesto.
I think the way I had written it originally was it was a very synthetic rise, starting from here. TV goes on,
And global markets plummeting. Stand by. I'm told we're about to get some
and then
additional information.
a very synthetic rise, going from a low note, building up, ooh, and it just kept rising and rising. And I had the orchestra joining in,
I've been asked to read this manifesto.
and then
There has never been peace
we watched the movie.
the greater the suffering
And
for the people.
one of the great things about working on this project was where our editorial is, my studio was next to editorial, so I was literally down the corridor. So Chris was able to come into my room
Can I help you now?
and watch me trying to play the piano very badly, like a chimpanzee banging notes. But this scene here, I wrote with him in the room, and for the first time now, we're getting emotion instead of just making it a tension cue.
Go.
It just flipped it on its head. Before that rise, you knew something was going to happen, and now, it was more about the emotion of, gosh, the world could be coming to an end. Now, I have a feeling we're about to get into some title music. Bongos, obviously. And now we're hearing a theme for the first time.
Don't understand. The attacks didn't happen.
Longest mission intro ever, I think. This
An hour ago.
poor flute player could barely breathe.
What's done is done. And we say it's
Here we go. I shouldn't talk over this, but I have to. So now I think you have permission to start smiling. Now with this, we've got this very famous theme that we all love and know, but we wanted to slightly twist it on its head. So the melody is actually in half time, whilst the bass line is in double time. We have this new end. Which was an idea by Chris. He just kept wanting this feeling, and I think probably it was a nod to Rogue, a very operatic ending. This ba ba ba, very over the top, but it works so well. And that's a sort of trumpet motif there.
Sir.
And again, this ba da ba ba da ba. It's the second phrase of Lalo's theme. So again, same DNA. Yeah, so that opening was... I still get excited when I see that in a non-egotistical way, but it's Mission Impossible. And there's the legend himself, Lalo, who I'm sure cannot believe that his theme is still being sung by people all over the world. It's pretty amazing. So yes, that opening titles, again, hard one to crack. I think I started that one 5 months, 4 or 5 months before we finished. And again, we came back. We were trying to add some more fairy dust on it, even at the last minute. Because it's a hard one. It sets up your tone, and I've done a more faithful version to the original theme at the end, for the end credits, because I think we wanted to just show respect to the whole franchise, and this one was just bit of bongos. In time with the walking. There's Eddie, an amazing editor, but most amazing person. He got us through it. I think two things I want to also talk about is our amazing music editor, Cecile. Music editors, I think, rarely get talked about and rarely get given the credit they deserve. But Cecile, really, I'll point out some of the scenes that she was very involved with cracking. So music editors have several roles. They're the translator between the director and the composer, and they can protect both sides, really. But also they they help you get through it by taking some music that you've written maybe for another scene that doesn't work, and maybe they find somewhere else that it can work. So
special activities.
His reputation precedes.
Cecile, Eddie, and Chris were just as important with where music worked. You know, a composer, you work on a scene and you get very attached to it, and sometimes it's you're writing it for the wrong scene, which we'll point out in a couple of scenes.
No one comes between you and that plutonium. Not Hunt, not his team, not anyone.
Three-note motif again from the original show.
The White Widow has spies at every level of government. This plane is posing as a commercial airliner so we can jump into France undetected.
So, another little spot with no music. So our lineup with the orchestra, very, very big lineup. We had 12 bongo players. We had 14 drummers, which is again 13 more than you normally would. And very large orchestra. We had 12 French horn players, 12 trombone players, 4 trumpets, 2 sax players, 2 tuba players, strings. I think we were on about 92. We had a fantastic choir, which came to about 60 singers. We also had a kids' choir of about 20 from Thomas's. And you'll hear them in a scene coming up when we're in the cathedral, and we do there's a wide aerial shot of inside, and there, because there had been a piece of music being sung from the choruses in the church, I thought actually it would just be a bit fun to write a new piece so it sounds like school, but maybe it's coming from the choir. Anyway, so that was our extraordinarily large lineup. And we're coming up to a truly amazing scene coming up here, which again musically was not planned this way. It was when Tom jumps out, I actually played it more atmospheric, and we had there was actually a very long choir rise.
System, follow it to the target. Open your chute when the system says not before and definitely not after.
And
Through your mind will be your kneecap.
Again, watching it a few times, stepping back from it, and just constantly kind of looking the same way Chris and Eddie look at the movie. I try to watch it. I try to sit down and try to watch it every Sunday. Because normally I am working 7 days a week, which is a good thing. But I'll try on a Sunday to just watch the whole movie and see where I think there's pacing issues or melody's not working. There's not enough of the melody. And this is a great shot coming out. I love this. Our amazing brass section. So we recorded at 2 different studios. We recorded at Air Studios in London at Hampstead, and we also recorded at Abbey Road Studios. And there's my eardrums have gone. And gosh, that looks good. And also it's amazing being able to watch this, because also you're writing a lot of the time. You've always got, when you're looking at the screen, you've got words written around it. You've got your name written in the middle, so you're always put off by that unless you love your own name, which I don't. But there's always a lot of data, and it's not color corrected either. So that's always. So here's the beginning of this rise texture, which I always had, but then right there, as soon as he misses, where he grabs onto him, started trying to do this in effect with the brass rips. So it's 12 French horn players.
Altitude 10,000 feet.
On this surround effect. So if you're able to hear this in surround, it's each rip, rap, 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 is moving around the cinema. So you're getting a total surround feeling with it. Or if you're watching it on your iPhone, you're hearing it two ways, from left to right. So
5,000.
and also our pulse. Again, there was no tempo change here, and then Chris was sitting in my room,
Deploy.
and he said, "What about if it just started building pace up? So it's a gradual pace, all building up tempo-wise, all the way until the bang happens, and then this was played silently at one point."
Oh, God.
Which, and then again, we were just talking about. This was a Tom idea, actually, having a bit of music here, and it just adds a bit of fun to it. And here's the beginning of a nightclub.
Looks like you lost your oxygen.
You're slowly hearing it in the background, and it's the same tempo as the cue, also, which is it's good. Always trying to connect your source music to your actual score. I think I wrote this piece also, actually. Late night raving going on in my house, which thankfully it was a lot of sleepless nights. I remember writing this track because I think it was the night before our baby was born. So thankfully, with midnight feeds, I was able to start writing dance music every night. I love this shot. I think it's club scenes are always a difficult one visually. I always remember the club scene in Basic Instinct. It was just a great scene, and this just captures that club environment. Not like I go to clubs any longer, but when I used to, it sure summed it up. And we're about to, I think, enter one of the best fight scenes I think I've ever seen in my life. And unfortunately or unfortunately, there is no music in it. So it's an interesting one, because it shows you don't necessarily need music in scenes, which is, I think, is always a hard thing to. It's very hard choosing whether you want music or you don't want music. And I think normally the process is you sit with your director and editor and you spot the movie. This scene, though, right from the beginning, Chris had always mentioned not wanting to have music, because you're hearing the bass from the club. So that there is an underbelly sense of something going on, but yeah, I think it's one of the best fight scenes I've ever seen, and I'm pretty grateful that nobody did want music, because I wouldn't know how to score it. I did have a go at it, just as an experiment, and it was interesting. Music seemed to kind of slow it down, or it gave away a lot of information. It's all in the eyes. It's all in their looks, and then amazing sound effects. it just shows you how powerful scenes can be without music also. But yes, I think the whole sound team here and James Mather and his amazing team, it just shows you just what an amazing job sound does. If you watch this silently, it's a great scene, but gosh, you feel the pain just from hearing it. But yeah, so this is there's no music here. But maybe I'll talk about other processes that we started on. So yeah, so I got involved with the movie really, I think by presenting to Chris some ideas of what I thought we could do and how we could musically tell a new story. I had seen some clips, some scenes, but from what he talked about, I just went with it, and I just felt this piece, Love's Reduced, which we'll keep talking about, and I'll point out where it comes in, was Ethan's journey. And I thought that this was this new story that Chris was telling and Tom was telling with this movie. So I wrote a lot not to picture. And gosh, it's hard to talk when it's this visually. What a great scene. Blimey. Oh, no. Ouch. So that was a major thing, writing not to picture. And I think also it's a difficult thing starting a new project with somebody, also starting with a new composer. Chris had created some amazing films with Joe Kramer, and Joe's created amazing soundtracks. Rogue really was a fantastic score and fitted the picture just perfectly. So it's always it's an intimidating thing coming into a new relationship. And it's not just, weirdly enough, it's just not about writing music most of the time. It's about whether you click. You've got to work and live and breathe with each other for a long time, 6-8 months. And if you don't personally get on, it doesn't matter if you're writing a new Requiem. It's not going to work. So we had to... So thankfully, it clicked. And, and we had a good laugh. But yes, so the main process was I presented quite a lot of ideas and different approaches to Chris. And there's a scene coming up, which was the second scene where they actually took one of my suites and cut to the music, which was a first for Chris. He said that he had never done that before, changing picture to music. So that was, but also I think it was a great discovery because, again, as well as this fantastic theme that we have a very famous time signature, 5/4. That boom, 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 boom. And I thought, gosh, we should just eliminate the notes and just do that time signature as an action suite, which many films have done. But the fact is, this is the original. This is going back to the 60s. So I think we're going to be coming up to that scene in a bit, and I'll point it out. But again, it wasn't written to picture originally, and it was cut to it.
Who sent you?
I can't tell you that.
What are you doing? A date with White Widow. He had a date with the Widow. You look nothing like him. Now, we have to hope they never met. Hope is not a strategy.
Oh, you must be new.
I have no other choice. White Widow's our only lead. Gotta be distracted for 5 minutes.
Don't do it.
So we had a lot of recording sessions with on Mission, it's weird. It's kind of a great time to be able to hear the music come alive. But then there's a lot of we record it separately because the edit is constantly evolving. So we record everything in sections. So the strings are separate than the brass is separate than the woodwind. Also, I think it would be impossible to get 200 and whatever it was, 255 players in one room at one time. It just would not be possible. Here's another rave track that I wrote.
What do you think you're doing?
I'm going with you.
Like hell you are.
People have been sent here to kill Locke.
No shit.
No, not me. Contractors. Paid assassins. They don't know what he looks like. They only know he's meeting the widow at midnight. If you go through with
So yeah, so we record everything as its own separate identity, just so if picture changes in any way, we're able to edit the actual music stems and make it work. Also, another reason is that you want to be able to push certain layers because you're dealing with sound effects, and you'll see there's a lot of helicopter noise coming up and motorbike noise, and you want to be able to push, for example, the short strings. And if you record everything at the same time, it works as a piece of music, and it's lovely to listen to on the album. The most important thing is how it works in the film. And you can't, if you record everybody at the same time, you're just unable to mix it around the sound effects. So we record everything separately, so we can have total control on the dub stage and push certain textures. I love the scene.
Dreams of a very different future. One in which her unique talents were no longer a problem.
I was there in the background. You won't see me because I was hiding. But I was there on that day of filming, which is always quite interesting because composers really don't have exciting lives. They don't go to premieres because they're working on another project but you rarely go to set, and you sit in a very dark room by yourself. But seeing that set was just fantastic. I think just behind the where the band is, I popped my head in and looked at it. It's fantastic. It's a beautiful looking set.
You can't possibly.
And the lighting is great. Yes, so this scene was slightly different.
I suppose it's better than John Doe. Is there another name?
The whole entrance to it, there was no score than I did to school.
Certainly.
We don't have a lot of time.
I'll be honest with you, a man of your reputation, I was expecting someone uglier.
And the source music was different also. It was interesting choosing. Well, I never chose a song, but Chris was a lot of different songs that you're hearing in the background was potentially tried. Which it's another other role is choosing the right music in the background. That club scene, I wrote quite a lot. I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks of France was going on in my house, writing at home.
The Americans, for starters.
If that were true, I would know it.
Who do you think you're the new spies of the government? So there are people here who don't want this meeting to happen. Don't believe me?
It's also always interesting when you're working on a film or a project and you see characters. I worked on the Crown, which of course Vanessa is in. So I think when I started Mission, I had just finished season 2 of The Crown. So I kept reminding myself not to be writing bassoon solos every time she came onto the screen. Which we always did in The Crown. So here, these high textures was an idea from Chris. And again, bleeding back into the source music again. So we wanted to keep everything in the same key. So it comes in and out. You're still hearing the source, but then it's stopping now, obviously, because everybody's aware of a fight happening. So now the music enters. Again, I think this was Cecile, our music editor. I wrote this piece for somewhere else actually, and very tasteful judgment here. Which was playing that action dry, and then for that final punch, then introducing the music. So here was the beginning of a Walker motif, this piano, which again I had not originally written to picture. Whilst Chris was filming the Halo shoot, I was in London trying to write this motif for Walker, and this was the first time the first time I wrote it to picture here. Again, a hard scene coming up to write. It's weird. It's what you think is the simplest is 9 times out of 10 the hardest scene to write, or what you've probably written the most amount of times. A lot of information being given now, and you need to pay attention. And I think this is one of the interesting things with film music. You've got to follow the dialogue, and you've got to follow the story, and sometimes it may not be the most interesting thing on the album to listen to, but we don't want it to pull away from the information that we're being given. So
We paid a great deal of money for this.
very difficult scene to score,
Gave us everything but this man's
and was at it for quite a while.
Yes, Stu?
His name is Solomon Lane, British special agent turned anarchist. He used rogue covert operatives to create a terror network called the Syndicate. Sabotage, assassination, mass murder.
So the scene coming up was one of the, I think it was the first time Chris and Eddie had been playing with my Love's Reduced suite, which was to me really it's Ethan's theme. It's Ethan's relationship. It's his journey. It's his soul, really.
I connect a buyer and a seller.
And
Interested in cash, so if you want the
they tempted in the scene coming up with no sound effects.
That's right.
So it's just music. And I'll point out when it comes in. Again here, very difficult scene to score. This cat and mouse, back and forth. Again, it's always interesting when you're watching these scenes because you spend a lot of time. The score was mixed by Steve Lipson, who's an amazing mixer, and we spent a long time with all those elements, those synth elements, moving around the room, different parts, but listening to it on your iPhone, you probably won't get to hear it. So here it is. Here's Love's Reduced, and this was the first place it was used in properly. No sound effects. And you could have played this as an action scene. You could have played this as tension. But it's played as emotion, which is genius. I wish I could say it's my own genius, but I didn't write it for there. I wrote it for Tom's character. But this is who he is, and this is it's giving a fascinating different sense to the scene. And weirdly enough, like many things, when you I tried writing this differently. I took the same piece of music and made it darker for the twist that's about to happen here. You know, this is low. This is seeing a side of Ethan that we've not seen before. Just a great frame shot, this, and it's... But yes, it was interesting. So they took that piece of music I'd written, they pulled out all the sound effects and played it emotionally. I tried taking the same theme but making it darker. We watched it, and it morphed the scene into something that you weren't invested in.
Would you draw the line at killing cops?
And it still always amazes me how music can totally change the emotion that we're feeling and seeing also. And I think that it's always interesting when a piece of music is used from a different scene or out of context and it's placed somewhere else, something interesting can be added.
You have got to be kidding me.
If you want Lane out of prison, this is how it gets done.
I wanted Lark to break him out, not Ethan Hunt. I wanted Lark at the exchange, not Ethan Hunt.
Great shot. So again, here, I think at one point this was the cue coming up. Started much earlier. It started around here.
I'm guessing that wasn't Lark.
And
One of Lark's recruits.
Not according to our intelligence.
I think after a couple of times watching it again, it's just filling gaps which you don't necessarily need.
Was an American agent.
So we just started it later. Singular high note. Something that
You're suggesting Hunt is John Lark.
which writing less is sometimes more, which I'm still trying to learn. It takes a long time to do that, but I suppose it's just, somebody said to me, it's just like cooking. You don't need 20 ingredients. You can make a Michelin meal out of 3. You've just got to get the right ingredients. So I think it's difficult writing narrative scenes because you feel that you should be doing turn after turn, and the dialogue's doing that. So you sometimes can sit back and just support the scene.
Guise of serving his country.
Assumes his own secret identity.
Free to operate at will, for the full support of the U.S. government.
Why? Why would Hunt turn?
Why did Lane do it?
And there is our baddie theme. So now you know that baddie theme. Now when we're telling the audience, do not trust him.
Betrayed him, disavowed him, cast him aside, and how long before a man like
But our baddie theme was a late discovery. I had tried writing a darker tune, and then weirdly enough, one night I was playing with the original Mission theme, and there was this it's halfway through the theme, and it's very quick, and it's been there all this time, but we just didn't know. So here's coming up a big scene, which was edited to picture, and I think it changed a lot, but when I started on this film, this was, I think, the second scene that they had edited to the music, and we I think possibly secured the job really for me. And it's our 5/4 rhythm. So again, it's going back to the TV show. And the one thing from watching all the films, I wasn't aware of people taking that famous pattern and just eliminating the actual notes and just focus on that ba ba da ba ba da ba ba ba. So just, and then back to our original. So the original mission theme, ba-da-dum, but spread half time. So you know it, but it's not too obvious.
Is it true Lane gassed a village of 2,000 people?
Yes, I think the one thing out of this film I'll never be able to write in 5/4 again. I think it's officially in the coffin now. I say that I'll give it a year, but it's
If it makes you
it is so symbolic to Mission Impossible, and I think that I always knew that was one thing that I could be wrong, but I wasn't aware that it had been a color that had been touched on. We're just focusing just on that rhythm.
I think he's going to keep that to himself.
I think that,
We'll get to him.
and here we're back into it again. And it's always nerve-wracking. You've got this iconic theme, and you don't want to be disrespectful to it. You don't want to try to make it too clever. You want to just look at that DNA and just go, okay, well, how do we make it work this movie? It's interesting. I was listening to some of the other scores from the prior films and watching it to this movie, and they just didn't work. It's a different color. It's just a different tone. So it was difficult making a blend of orchestral and electronic. And there's a lot of electronics in the score which you don't necessarily feel as electronic, which is good, because I don't necessarily want it to feel too modern or. So we're coming up to now. It's obvious what this time signature and what the melody is, but for months we actually had it slightly different, and it was more obvious what the melody was. And it's coming up now. Dum dum bum bum dum dum. So it should be bum bum dum bum da da bum bum bum. But I thought, gosh, I wonder if we just kept pedaling that same note, and so I removed the actual theme and just and went totally committed and went straight into it. So this here coming up was a bit darker than what it is now, quite a lot darker musically, and this was a Mr. Cruise note here. Ba-da-da, here's a bum bum bum. There's a big. So this was much darker, and this was Mr. Cruise comment about this musically. Let's go for it. Let's kick some ass. Great shot. Oh, God, still feel sick watching that, and I've watched it about 100 times. So, action scenes. Action scenes are always the hardest to write to, because you need to tell the story but keep tension going. And this is where, as a composer, your best friend, the music editor, comes in and helps sometimes. Cecile had a lot of good ideas about this scene, and I had little sections in it were slightly different. Cecile had tracked some of the suites I had written, and yeah, there's a lot of going back and forth. I think also once you've written it, you also then go back and you start looking at it again of where can we put this iconic theme into it. So you want to keep it for meaningful reasons. So here's a great spot because they get away. So these stabs, gosh, we recorded so many different ways. I think the last count I counted is that I think I recorded maybe over 180, nearly 200 stabs, trying different ways of doing it. And that was what we ended up with was number one. Always learn.
Need extraction! We're on our way!
So there we're introducing a new theme, which really at one point we started off that was being used as a syndicate theme, and then really it then evolved just like the story of the movie did. It really became the power of the syndicate and what it really represents. That ba da ba ba bo da da da, which will feature more in later reels. Love this action. So, yes, this began as one of the first recording sessions, really, because this was our amazing drum section started on this with our bongo players, of course. Not a day goes by without the bongos. I still have slight anxiety watching this. From watching it, also from writing it, but that's... So again, lots of motifs in there, all from the original TV show. It's introducing its straightforward plotting theme. Ba 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 ba. Here was written slightly different. Originally, it was full-on action music here. And then Chris and Eddie, I believe, cut out the music so that it became more of a sound effect moment. So I took all the action music out, went to just the high notes and stabs. And yeah, it just creates much more tension, hearing the sound of the cars going around. Bit of a victorious moment there. And we're off. Yeah, so when they're yes, that was all originally big. Oh, this was a new idea. Here was silent, and Chris and Eddie were in my room, and again that ba da. Well, there's our theme. That ba da is part of the theme, just taking the second note out. So again, going back to the Legends original piece of music. Now here is I forgot these boys. Sorry, Frank, Paul, and Gary are amazing snare drummers. This was a new idea. This was originally, Love's Reduced was here. And it just gave a different story to the scene. It was much stiller. You heard the sound of the waves more. And we had it for a long time like that. But then when maybe a few months ago, we were watching it and the pacing of the movie, it slowed down. And I believe I would take credit for it, but I have a feeling this was Eddie had the idea about maybe doing the plotting theme there. So I was playing with it in my studio next to editorial, and Chris was sitting there, and I started writing the snares, and there was happy faces. So we went with it. And it's a great nod to the past. I think just go for that original plotting theme and make it as pure and simple as it can be. A lot of composers feel very nervous when a director comes into the room and they don't like playing music to the director, or they don't like making musical changes when people are there. I love it. I love having a room full talking about anything under the sun behind me. It's good because sometimes when writing a scene, you have an idea and you go for it, and you're working you go down a different rabbit hole, which if you have the director in the room, they can say right from the beginning, "Oh no, I don't think that'll work." So it was a good collaborative process on this movie. Being able to work next to editorial and also I think for Eddie and Chris being able to pop their head in and just say, "We have an idea. What if we took that plotting theme and made it dark? What would that sound like?"
Survival. Survival.
Je suis blessée par balle. Mais trop passif, je suis blessée.
We gotta go.
So that this here coming up is again a little nod to the original Mission theme, which is some may not find as obvious, but it is the Mission theme. It's just played half time and repeated. It's da 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 bo da da da, but it was an experimental idea of just trying to take that theme and just, instead of evolving to the second part of the phrase, just keep peddling the same idea.
The name's Walker, by the way.
Was the little car your idea?
Christ! What the hell was that?
Now this scene coming up right from the beginning, it was always Chris's plan, no music, and until I think coming up to in a bit further on, I thought I'd have a go at seeing what it would be like with school coming off for the standoff. And I think I wrote maybe 2 or 3 ideas for it, and it worked in context. But when watching the movie, it slowed it down and it took you out of it. And again, the sound effects just are fantastic, and you really feel part of it. And you don't. It just shows you just don't always need music for scenes, which I know some composers will cry at hearing that, but you just don't. It's always interesting, the whole concept of music with scenes like this, because in one respect, the music can enhance it and take it to another level, but in one respect, it can pull you out of it being truly realistic. And I just think this is just a great action scene. I don't have a driving license, but I can imagine that's what it would be like driving. It's truly something else. I probably wouldn't not be able to drive that well, but. So the original queue started here. The original queue started here. And I was trying to play with the tempo of those sound effects when going through that tunnel. So it built to this, stopped, and then I had a high note for tension, and then again the music started building up, building up, building up. Bang, straight into it. And played through this. And yeah, it worked.
Very interesting.
It worked. But weirdly, it took us out of the scene, and it didn't quite work for the comedy. So we just held back and then came in for this aftermath here for Elsa. That's another hard thing with Mission. It's the concept of writing music, the work around comedy. It's been done very well in the past, but we didn't want to. We wanted to try to figure out a different way of supporting the comedy, but without doing comedic music, because it was that idea was just a different movie.
There's a microwave tracker in his neck.
You know what to do. Let me just assure you, this won't hurt. Enough. 90 seconds. You and your apostles think we're going to trade you for the missile.
So this scene here,
I'm here to tell you.
We tried at one point experimenting with, as soon as he puts the stopwatch on, the ticking starts.
Did you ever choose not to?
And we tried as an experiment having the orchestra doing a pulse at the same tempo as the stopwatch, and it was interesting because it was just adding more tension, and it was working in time with the stopwatch. In context, it was interesting, but when watching it with scenes either side, slowed the music down. Slowed the scene down.
The syndicate was created to tear them down.
We're being given a lot of interesting and important dialogue, and the music just became distracting. So the simple low drone underneath just was a way of just supporting the scene without distracting it.
The end you always feared is coming.
And sound effects had a great idea there, adding that pulse. It's actually a sound effect there.
All your good intentions.
It's always interesting. Sometimes you can't quite tell if it's music or if it's sound effects or sound design. It always makes the score, I think, just more interesting when you can all work together and not necessarily know who's doing what.
Get him up. You're mine now.
You're just full of surprises, Nark.
Your brother's plan was bad from the word go. You'd have lost all your men, and Lane would have been killed in the crossfire.
I always love watching scenes this. I think if you'll notice up on the bridge, I'm not too sure if Chris pointed this out, but you'll see somebody wearing a motorbike helmet.
What can you do?
Who has obviously been following Mr. Cruz around Paris. So
Certainly not to the bottom of the Seine.
Elsa was actually there, which you'd have to properly look, but she's on the bridge watching them.
Let's talk about the woman.
Which I think, as a film nerd, I love these little things.
She was with you at the ballet. So I saw her again today. She tried to kill me. She had the chance to kill you, but she didn't.
So this scene coming up, musically, this was a piece that I wrote that actually musically evolved much more. But Chris and Eddie had heard it and actually took the beginning of it and looped it, which is very interesting because it stops it becoming too emotional.
You don't meet the courier, and the plutonium goes to the highest bidder.
And here we go.
I hate for her to come between us.
She's yours.
It's this very minimal chord progression. It's just going back and forth, 2 notes.
Go to London. Instructions will follow.
Which, the way I had written it, actually was much more melodic and it did more changes. But they liked the beginning of it and the way it just, after they had edited it, they had they made it more musical and just looped it, so you just felt something was happening. Now back to Love's Reduced again. I think this was always like this. And it's always interesting when you watch a scene like this because you think, wow, I'll try a different approach to it. Nothing worked. Musically, I think there was a version where it was a bit more tension, but it wasn't needed. This was it's visually a beautiful scene. And it's letting you ask more questions, really, now, instead of playing it as tension or a cat and mouse chase scene, which is, it sort of is, but really, we know that he knows that she's there. So this piece of music, as I said before, was always about Ethan's journey, and to me it was Ethan's theme. And then Chris had asked about how every time he heard it, he always kind of in his head heard a lower version of it. And I tried taking the same notes, putting it down a few octaves, and it never quite worked. And then I thought, actually, it just needs a new piece of music that supports it. And this is it. And they both work perfectly well together. But, and it shows you how important it is recording things in separate stems. This would have normally worked with that high texture on top. But we muted that. And you've now just got just the low strings and the underbelly of that piece just by itself.
And my sex. Why?
After we captured him in London, they tried to bring Lane home through diplomatic channels. But too many countries want their pound of flesh. A man like that, what he's seen, what he knows about British intelligence, they can't have him talking to a foreign government ever.
That's not what I'm asking. Why did they send you?
And it's always interesting when recording things. This piece was probably one of the hardest pieces to record, which it is always interesting because you always think that when you hear very busy music, that is what's hard. The simplest of cues can be the hardest, because the one difficult piece with the difficult thing with this piece of music is the way the waves work on it. There's emotion, but it's typically British. It's trying to hold back and not give too much away. But there's waves happening with each chord, slightly building and pulling away, and we had to experiment a lot with recording that, because sometimes the way you recorded it worked too much and it became too classical and too emotional, and it gave too much away. There, it builds and pulls away, builds and pulls away. So we're getting close to our big jump scene.
Yes.
Which
Are you ready to meet the courier?
was a lot of sore hands for the bongo players coming up, but it's good. So again, there's our motif, and it's simply just taking that second note out of Lalo's famous theme, ba-da-bo, it's a ba-bo. And this little string motif here, it's quite a bit Bernard Herrmann-esque, who was the composer for the majority of Hitchcock's movies. It's just that a bit of nostalgic feeling, really.
So what the hell happened?
I think what's always been interesting about the music to Mission and all the movies is how it's evolved, going from Danny Elfman's first movie and then going into Mission Impossible 2 that Hans Zimmer did. And I think I started working for Hans, I think a bit after this, but I always remember being at college watching Mission Impossible 2, and hearing Hans's music and loving that score. And weirdly enough, I then ended up working for Hans for about 15 years, and then I get to do my own Mission Impossible. So it's very exciting. But it's always been interesting about how people have different approaches to the themes. There's been songs done with it, there's been remixes done it, but it's how the schools have evolved. Then Michael took over, and then Joe, as I said, did a fantastic job. They've all done an amazing job. So it's very intimidating and scary when you've just got to forget about it. Weirdly enough, I think if you think about it too much, you get petrified and you don't write a note. So you have to kind of forget about what the challenge is. I think it's only kicking in now how intimidating it is, and now I'm feeling scared. But anyway, it's over with. So now I get to enjoy it. But yeah, you're in a privileged situation. It's the same. I worked on Terminator Genesis, and again, to be able to work with Brad Fiddel's famous Terminator theme, you've been humming it for most of your life, and then you get to start using it. So it's very interesting being invited into this family, which it is. They Ethan Hunt is part of some of the most amazing, some of my favorite films.
Corroborate a CIA narrative.
Again, a very difficult scene to write.
Search for Lark is nothing but
Informative narrative scenes. Baddie theme coming up. Plotting theme.
Normally people refer to you as your own worst enemy. It's just a figure of speech. I'm afraid Sloane's got some questions for
This scene, interesting enough, was written with Chris in the room. You talk about the scene quite a lot when writing.
She did, however,
just there, originally that swell was slightly earlier. It was just too on the nose. It was too heavy for Walker, and experimenting just by doing that darker tone and playing it later on the shot makes it just creepier. It's fascinating playing, just positioning one note, how it can change a scene.
This, sir. This is the trap. We are being directed. Hunt, sir, there are still 2 plutonium cores in the wind. And you lost them!
In fairness, sir.
Yeah, a lot of... we experimented with this a lot. All those swells.
Making excuses for him is your full-time job now?
Moving them around, and that's one of the great things to do with technology now. We're able to write it and move it compared to 40 years ago. Poor directors didn't get to hear the music until they recorded it with an orchestra. Now it's a different way of working, so I think it's better for the whole film process.
You think he's some observer? He's an assassin! Erica Sloane's #1 plumber. You go rogue.
Love that line. #1 plumber.
And kill you.
It's the job. No hard feelings.
Except that, Ethan, you've lost this one. What's done is done.
So yeah, they're interesting high textures there. That was Peter Gregson.
I am not asking you
on cello.
Direct order. This mission.
He's an amazing cellist and composer also. I've worked with Peter quite a long time now.
Here's your friend. Would you please talk some sense into...
I'm sorry, sir, but you left me no choice.
Yes, so here was there's a little Walker motif there.
The only ones who can get it for you. You in or out?
Which is played by Andy Richards, who I've always been a fan of. He's an amazing pianist, and has worked with amazing bands. It's a who's who of people he's worked with, and I had been listening to an album by the band Demon that he played on, totally not connected to this type of music, but his style of playing, and so I knew right from the beginning I wanted Andy to play the piano. So we recorded that at Air Studios in a massive hall, recorded by Jeff Foster. Jeff, I've worked with a long time. Jeff's worked on nearly, oh gosh, you name a movie, he's worked on them. A lot of the Bond movies. So Jeff recorded all of our sessions. All of our sessions.
I'll do it my way.
Don't take your eyes off.
There's a bit of solo bongo action going on, performed by myself. I had to get in there somehow. But a lot of editing had to occur for that to be in time, but anyway.
Enough games. I'll take you out of here.
So again, that motif there goes back to the DNA of the original TV show. It's just presented in a different manner.
prearranged run.
And I think that
Know as soon as we leave the building.
no, it's interesting because I think you can keep discovering new things, but then you just have to stop and just go, okay, I think we have our food groups now,
So fucking complicated.
and focus on what we've got. I think
I help you frame. You give me the plutonium.
I think we counted up how much experiments I wrote, and I think there's probably about another 2.5 hours of music sitting there,
The old world.
not used. Maybe not used for a reason, some may say, but it's always interesting when you have a famous theme, you start working on it and arranging it in different ways. It starts going down different paths that you didn't expect.
The apostles are getting the plutonium.
Hunt's the only friend you've got. You're only alive today because he didn't have the guts to kill you. Sloan was right. The IMF is Halloween. Nothing but grown men wearing...
Uh-oh.
What?
So, another difficult scene to write this. You know, it's
just the job.
it's a reveal. You don't want to be too big. You've got another twist again.
Ruined your day, haven't I?
And I think we recorded this a few times. They all should have played it much harder than this, than the way we've got it here. And we came back to it again and just played it slightly softer, and it just made it less over the top. Andy Richards on piano. Again, there's our motif, ba-da-bo, taking the second phrase. So yeah, it's our mission theme, but just played more dramatically, I suppose.
So how'd I do?
I never had it.
And again, you could have written this far more heroic and gone for they've won, but we wanted to try to kind of pull it back a bit.
You're making a mistake.
No. The mistake was mine when I saved your life over Paris.
This proves nothing. I'm playing a role. Just
Coming up,
trying to recover that.
this scene was played silently for a while,
Makes a good point.
and
He's paranoid, delusional.
and then I had to go at writing
Where did
it,
Sloan get the dossier from?
I have no
and
I do.
I went back. I had an idea. Weirdly enough, I went back to our opening titles idea about the bongos.
I don't appreciate being used, Walker.
It's always hard when it's like when you find your favorite candy bar, you want to eat it all the time. It's like the bongos. They're just such a good sound.
Hands to the air! Weapons down! Drop it! Weapons down right now! You!
It's okay.
You
It's okay. It's all right.
Down!
It's all right.
I thought we had a deal.
We did. And now we don't. There is too much at stake here for me to take any chances. I'm bringing you all in, along with Walker.
Plutonium is still out there.
And I don't trust a living soul in that room to get it. We'll sort out who's who in Washington.
So we're coming up to one thing to write that's difficult to write is gunfire. Frequencies are very difficult, and I think that's the other thing is that it's not just about I'm going to write a piece of music I think that works. You've got to write around what's going on, sound effects wise, and the red. So again, the bongos thankfully cuts right through. So this I'd wanted here to try to write this bongo and piano duet. And the string motif there is a reverse of the mission theme. I know I'm going into too much detail and it's a bit too nerdy, but it is good to know. There again, just in a different key, descending notes of the Lalo theme.
First team is down. Send backup.
Sir. No, man, down! Down! Somebody!
Sir.
So again, here you could. I actually tried. It's a big moment, and I think I tried writing a bit more emotion around it, and it took away from the performances. It's there. You don't need to throw the kitchen sink at it. So less was more, and it's our love's reduced piece. You know, this is about Ethan. Also, it's constant sacrifices and challenges.
Get that son of a bitch.
This was a killer for the poor bongo players. We're going to triplets and then straight 16ths and.
Come on.
So this whole scene is what I was talking about earlier. Very difficult to write because of humor. So trying to kind of not write comedic music, you're creating this. You're helping the humor by pulling out really, and your pauses and.
You turn right.
Am I right? I can't do that.
So a fantastic piece of I believe it's John Tavener, and it's a requiem piece that which would be sung in this type of environment. So I had a thought that nice and still, no score, but when the score happens, especially when you'll see him running around, we start using the choir now.
Why is he running in circles?
So here we go into the choir. So I wanted to make the choir actually sound like they're singing, but they're part of the score, and they're actually singing Mission Impossible in Latin, which we do for our end credits also.
Okay, you need to cross the street on your left as soon as you can.
So we're coming up to the big shot, which I think I had heard and read about before I got to actually score it, because I think everybody in the world knew about the shot.
Okay, now go across the street right in front of you.
So that again, it's our Mission Impossible theme, but I thought put it into the bases and love this whole sequence here. This is so much fun to write for, because it had to be blood and sweat and tears. Ouch. I played that scene to the musicians before playing it, and there was tears.
You're gaining on him. Go straight.
So again, it's trying to write around the humour and not write comedic music. So we try the kind of, when it cuts to Benji, to a solo bongo player playing.
Yes, I'm... Oh, it's left! Turn left! Sorry, I had the screen lock on.
With a little hint of our mission theme on the bases.
Thank you. What are you waiting for? I'm jumping out a window!
So again, it's like you save your moments where you can do bum bum ba da 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 bum. If you save them, then it means something. But I love that pause. And I heard nod. So again, that was trying to figure out. I think I always had it as that pause, and I always laughed at it. So thankfully, Chris liked it also. So here, this piece here, Eddie and Chris had this idea. I'd written this for this piece of music near the end, which you'll hear. But they had put it here, and they said, try working it around here, and it worked.
Come on, Ethan.
And then especially in the next section coming up for the side shot of Tom writing. It's a great shot, and musically there is never enough. Full tilt. But again, it's one of these sections where you just hear the amazing sound that our musicians, this brass section played on, and how unique they are. The ability to use live musicians is always a joy, and it's the life they bring to it, and their instruments. It's not just their playing. These instruments are,
You can't do it, can you?
especially in the strings, they're worth millions. So there's a whole life to them.
He still has friends.
And each one of them has just brought this score alive to a level that I don't think any of us could have dreamt of. And the brass there particularly, just amazing. So again, we started with our
I'm her
a
guardian.
little hint to our Love's Reduced
If I see you again,
theme.
she dies. If you try to warn her, she dies. Know when you're beat.
Now coming up to now this was a difficult section here. Musically, Chris had said to me, I want this to feel like the end of the movie. Musically, it's got to be as big as possible. That's always intimidating trying to write the end of the movie for the middle of the movie. So it was a big challenge, but I think we got there. As Chris said, I want choir. Go for it. Here we go. I think where the Shard is, whilst they were filming this, you'll see the Shard in the background. I was staying there that night, on I don't know what the term is. It's the holiday you have before your wife gives birth. There's a term for it. I don't know what it's called. But anyway, I was there, and it was funny seeing all the helicopters in the air.
That's a 5 megaton nuclear device. That's greater than all the explosive energy released in World War II.
So interesting with that one. We recorded that a few times. The slight positioning of it was always interesting for Walker's wave.
Yeah, and they're both linked by...
Tried putting the melody maybe a bit later, and it's always interesting just moving something a few frames earlier. The different feel that it can give.
The countdown is started via a remote detonator, which is also a failsafe, meaning once the countdown starts, it can't be stopped.
So solution to this is?
We're working on it.
So Technically, this is a suicide mission.
So some other things that we did, which was quite interesting, I think, as well as doing our percussion sessions, we did some sample sessions with all of the musicians and getting different miking set up with the players, because I think that we all know how the instrument sounds, but especially with the bongos, as I said before, we tried different mallets, we did bamboo sticks, we did drumsticks, and we did hands. I think also we did playing on the floor. The floor at Air Studios was not a church technically, it's a Methodist hall, but the floor has got amazing parquet flooring. So we managed to get all of them playing single hits on the floor and actually make individual instruments out of that. So during some of the chase scenes, they're not. It's a lot of it's very high textures, giving us those 16ths, which sounds slightly electronic, but they're not. It's actually very organic.
We're in this mess because Ethan.
Again, very hard scene to write. It's always difficult writing less than more, and this was our underbelly texture of our loves reduced, and it's just those 4 chord progressions which you could easily start making it go into different directions and giving it more inner lines, but it's I think it's the simplicity that works. And
I'm coming with you.
It doesn't overtake the scene. This is a Chris idea coming up. Our plotting theme.
So how do we find him?
Microwave transponder, traceable via satellite anywhere in the world.
Which we didn't always have. It was I think we played it as a bit more. There was always a pulse, but we never had the plotting theme there.
36-hour delay.
So it's always a bit of fun when you can bring that theme back, because it just reminds us we're in Mission Impossible.
He's going to lead us to plutonium.
And it's never tiring hearing that theme.
His plan to put me in prison went to hell. Now he's going to want me there for the end.
And there's that baddie theme again. Ba-bam, ba-bam. All part of that original theme.
Should we inform the CIA?
The CIA's been infiltrated. I don't trust anybody outside of this room. We're going to have to go it alone.
So where do we go?
And unlike most Mission Impossibles, that's the first time we hear it's the first, I think the last time we hear a harp, so, but it got in there, 1 chord.
How are we doing, Mitch?
So this scene, the Kashmir scene, that one travelling shot was a hard one to write. And Cecile, amazing music editor, had actually tracked something from an earlier cue there. And actually, no, that came from a suite. And it's always interesting. I tried writing with the same notes, but just a different way of presenting it. Was just much louder and a bit more aggressive. And no matter how we kind of tried to rewrite the picture, the original always works. So we just stuck to the original.
What is it?
Well, the Nubra River is at the base of the Saishan Glacier. So a nuclear blast there would irradiate the largest natural irrigation system in the world. Fresh water from the border of China to India and Pakistan.
And also, here was I thought of an idea of just taking the actual melody and doing it as actual chords, something which I wasn't aware that I had done, but it was just a great way of just keeping it in our family
All that matters now is
without just being too overly musical and having lots of...
Maybe.
There's our bongos
There
again.
appears to be a flaw in the bomb's operating system. The remote detonator requires that firing key.
And our short strings again, doing that little motif of the descending notes,
So one of us needs to get the detonator and remove that.
which all relate back to the actual original Mission Impossible theme.
Yeah,
But what?
well, in order to make this work, we can't remove the key or cut the fuses until after the countdown starts.
Wait, just so I've got this clear. Our only chance is
So this sequence, this was a big one coming up. I think every sequence is a big one from now on, but this one was a hard one to write. It's the back and forth. It's you don't want to lose the tension.
Okay.
And musically, it's hard because if you stop a pulse, you've lost it. So you've got to start trying to figure out other ways.
Both devices are now connected to the detonator. 15 minutes should give you enough time to reach...
The sequence coming up, I think it was one of the first scenes I actually wrote a long time ago. And it's always fascinating with filmmaking because then the scene evolved, gets re-edited, and it then tells a different story. So you look at it again 3 months later, and it doesn't work. So thankfully, you have time, so you can just totally rewrite it again. But that whole introduction there, those long brass things, I think whenever I did that, something that always worked for Chris. He liked it, and I think that's why it's always important to always try to be near your director and editor. I think that when you're playing ideas, 9 times out of 10, I can tell if it's working or not by their facial expressions. They might not be able to describe it. It's because it's very difficult with music to talk about, and sometimes people use musical terms, and it becomes a different matter. Then I think it's always easier just talking about feelings and emotions, and that I then understand when somebody's talking about the tonic triad or the fact that it's in a diminished seventh chord. I get lost with that. I think it's far easier just talking about clear emotion.
Before New York.
And see, and when it works for somebody, if you're in the same room with each other, you're able to. It's the same way writers work. Writers' rooms, they're able to kind of bounce ideas off, and you start figuring out what works. Because I always think that the director's got a soundtrack. He or she has got a soundtrack in their head, and we've just got to translate what that is.
You're a long way from home.
I think that sometimes they say, well, you write the music and hopefully it'll work. I don't think so. I think they know what they want in their head. And our job is to try to translate that. Because they've been living with it far longer than us. We get invited into this process after they've been working on it for years, so
It's quite a full life.
Yeah, before Julia...
It was a Chris and Eddie idea, playing it emotionally, coming from Ethan's emotional point of view, musically.
Back in 55. And she convinced me to let it all go. Help where it's needed most.
You could be playing this with tension. You're going back and forth. You know that they're trying to track down
I'm happy for you.
the bombs, but a very clever idea to play it for pure emotion and just grab onto that.
You two should catch up.
Oh, no, I should get out of your hair.
I think that's also the fascinating thing about this process is how you can look at scenes differently because of the way the music changes it, and composers sometimes get tunnel vision and they see it as a different way, and it's not always right.
It was good to see you.
This is a very emotional scene. and playing it action-wise would never have worked. So now we're off. I think this is Chris's favourite piece. This little motif there.
Take both helicopters. No one else leaves.
Again, very hard because of the way this was originally. I think it was much longer, so you've got to re-look at the scene after you've written it, and I've got to say it's one of the reasons why you've got to also have a good team around you. Every department, it's not the composer gets the credit, but you've got to have a good musical team around you.
Keep working on it.
And thankfully, I have a great team working on this.
Don't worry about old Luther.
There was regular sleepless nights for them. Max and Stefan and Queenie, Jane, Sam, and Mike. Constantly keeping the music up to date with the picture changes, because that's one thing that gets forgotten about, is that the picture changes, the music's got to keep up with it. So
Walk.
So yeah, so we're heading to the helicopter, which was a lot of work, a lot of notes. A lot of notes for our poor copyist, Jill, who I think it was the most amount of music printed on a film. And Shane, who orchestrated the score. A lot of work.
It's too late. No. I'm gonna get the detonator. I'll figure it out. Find the other bomb.
And it's the storytelling that's being told. I think that, like this moment here, we just thought, here's where we go for it with the plotting theme. Cecile really did an amazing job with this whole sequence. A lot of the ideas were hers, and then that then had to get conformed to an evolving cut. I think sometimes people think that the composer sits down and you're sitting there and you just start writing and everything's simple. It's far from that. It's you're keeping up with a cut that's changing every day. So you need a good team around you that can make sure that it's up to date. And then musically, it's going to change because the story being told is just totally different. And that drop there, we wrote that a few different times, building to the drop, pulling out for the drop. So it's a difficult one to tell sometimes, because I think we had originally had it so that it stopped before the drop. But again, watching it several times, you feel, no, you've got to build for that drop.
What can I do?
In the kit, the pliers with the red grip.
Are you insane?
Mind your business, Benji.
This is my business.
So yeah, this was generally just a very difficult sequence to write, because there's a lot of going back and forth, and you still need to keep this tension building. There's a lot of sound effects going on, and you don't want to also be telling too much musically, because there's still we've got a long way to go with this story. So it's very difficult. So you're fighting with the sound effects of the helicopters, which is always a hard one. So you start kind of looking at your colours and the stabs which we had from, I think, right at the beginning of the movie. Chris really liked, and as I said earlier, we recorded a lot of different stabs, but we went back to our original ones, because they started becoming too musical or very interesting. It's just a very simple concept of one note, but with everybody playing random notes, how they change.
What, you can fly a helicopter?
Did you say helicopter? What the hell are you doing in a helicopter?
Did you just... Hey.
So again, here we're having to keep the tension going and a sense of a pulse going.
I know. I'll get it.
But there's dialogue going, so we can't be too intrusive.
You're gonna get it. I'll figure it out. You find a bomb, I'll get the detonator. I won't let you down. I'll let you down. Be ready.
Look, Ethan, come in.
Reggie, come in. Reggie.
So also, when listening to this, I think really it's like a 12, 14 minute cue, but we actually record it in sections, so we split it up probably into like 5-minute actual cues. Simply because if we recorded it that length, I think the poor musicians would die during the recording process. So we keep it in shorter spells. There's our plotting theme. Also, I think it was we wanted to save this plotting theme for as ballsy as one can have it for this sequence. We tried maybe earlier on in the film, and I think we've always done it short notes, very delicately, and just a hint. And now
The red one.
you get the full power of it.
Oh, I like her.
And again, it's just going back and forth. What I don't think people also understand, it's very difficult. As soon as you cut a different scene, then the music's got to keep the same tempo. And Eddie has been amazing at also the way he edits is keeping that sense of knowing that the music's got to need to fit. He cuts with very strict tempos. He doesn't cut to a tempo, a click track. He's got an internal tempo, which I think is amazing too. So when watching it, you start being very aware of a sense of a tempo measure to it. So once you start writing, you start being able to hit these cuts.
Me too.
This was again a tricky section here. Helicopter going down. Had a few ideas for this, and then weirdly enough, musically we started, instead of going down, started musically having the orchestra rising to go against visually what we were seeing, and it was pretty exciting. Here's our plotting theme. But yeah, it's, and then again, cat and mouse, going back to a quiet scene, and still keeping our attention going, all in the same tempo.
He wants us to. I'm heading to the village.
Just wait for me, all right?
Hill, sir, I think I found something.
Cut this wire.
Another build. Keep the tension going.
Turn that screw counterclockwise very slowly.
And then we have to get ready for another musical explosion happening.
How is he?
It's always difficult also because you just don't want to. You don't want to feel exhausted by it. So somehow you have to, during those quiet spots, keep us involved, but just somehow create a breath. And also these moments here, Yeah, that was a lot of work. We tried different things when the explosion happened on the engine. Trying the musical shifts after it, doing the musical shifts on it, just changes the feeling.
Ilsa, wait for me!
There's the bongos. Love this shot coming up.
No. Nuclear bomb.
And again, here we played this more action at one point, and then I wanted to try kind of doing our Mission Impossible chords there, and it just brought a bit of more fun to it. I think writing action music that's fun is also very, very difficult because I've done quite a lot of animation movies, and so I think fun is a difficult tone. And this sequence is very good. I love the way it's edited. It's very clever.
Benji, I found the other bomb.
Ilsa, where are you?
No. Here. That shot there. Again, very interesting. We experimented several times with whether you musically pinpoint Lane's hand going through the wall, or you don't acknowledge it. It's interesting when you watch it now because you remember every process that you did, where it was highlighting it was building to it, and then it was afterwards. So. Again, like the pull up musically there, our climax was building to before the pull up, I believe, at one point, and then. I still find this whole helicopter sequence amazing. The fact that he's flying it, we take all these stunts for granted nowadays. We think everything's fake, unlike these Mission Impossible movies where he does the stunts. Again, tempo's still going.
Benji, you read me?
I'm working on it. Ilsa, where are you?
I think we had about 3 seconds of no music. That's the longest we've had, probably. Half the movie.
You can't stop him.
Difficult to write around Lane also sometimes. The register of his voice. So you always have to keep that, be aware of that. I always like, when writing to picture, I always like, in my writing Cubase, which is my sequencer. And in Cubase, I always have, I have the dialogue imported as well as the sound effects. So as well as hearing it, I can actually, I see the waveform of the audio. And I think that's an interesting way to work around, because you're able to, as well as visually, you can see the spacing between dialogue and sound effects. So I think it's good to work that way. It's a different way of working. Maybe some may regard it as being a bit too academic, but I think it's interesting to be able to clearly see where you're going and work around that dialogue. I love this shot coming up. Oh. Again, these little inserts, we spent a long time trying to, figure out our musical tone there. Should it be more just less melodic, or should it just go for the action? The way this is edited, I love it. And one thing about this whole sequence also is the fact that Chris always wanted it to never feel that the music let us off. So when you listen to the score without the sound effects, there's always a constant rise. As soon as Lane starts fighting, right to the end of the sequence, there's always an element or a texture constantly rising. Even though the music may pull out, there's always something always rising. Yeah, it's always interesting when you remember the recording process with it, because I think there's a lot of orchestral effects that we tried. I think that you can always we did measured trems, but instead of doing measured trems, like here, I simply had the whole string section, so all 92 of them, each randomly choosing a note and not doing a measured trem, but playing the 16ths, but randomly rising up. And it's great texture. Yeah, thinking about the amount of people that it takes to do a score. I think because you see that credit saying composer, that it always comes off as being a very singular role. But I think our music department, probably it would be around over 280 people have worked on it, and it's always a very big team normally on a movie. This team was very big, but there's so many people that never get full credit. They're always they're sometimes not even mentioned at the end of the movie, unfortunately, sometimes, because there's not the space for all of them. But there's always a big team needed. And being able to work in London also, amazing musicians and recording studios.
There's nothing else you can do. Go be with your husband.
Here again, these two chords are something I wrote with Chris in the room. He had heard it, and again, you could be. The way he talked was just. I kept trying to think. Okay, we don't want to be too emotional.
Tell us what to do.
It's just going back and forth, two chords. There's slight clash in there. So you feel there's emotion, but there's hesitation.
Mm-hmm. Sit. Cut.
I told you.
There's the solo bongo player again. This is a very difficult sequence. I realise I say everything's a very difficult sequence, but that's the journey we have. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, I suppose. Reason this was difficult was because, again, it's trying to write a scene and not necessarily overwhelm it. there's many schools of thought regarding something like this. You could write it more musically, and there's something just barbaric about this and primeval, I think, about these two guys fighting, and I wanted to try to make it very percussive and treat the orchestra more as creating colors instead of playing music. Okay, we've got this vast, beautiful shots. And I had been experimenting with the chords actually that we hear from the beginning at the airport. These are the same chords, but they're just with more gravitas. And it was something that Chris liked. So I thought, okay, I'll try playing with this more. And also, writing to a scene like this is always difficult because it can become very Patch Adams, where you have to be hitting certain points, but you don't want it to just be a constant punctuation of visually what you're seeing. So you have to choose your hit points. And there's our chords from the beginning. But again, this principle of having something constantly rising. So each chord, they are similar, but there's always a rising note in them, building up to this absolutely horrendously painful shot. So again, this piece originated from our Kashmir wide shot earlier on in the movie, and it was cracked here.
Counterclockwise. Yep.
But I rewrote it, and again, rewriting it with Chris in the room, very useful.
The time comes, cut the green wire. Do not cut it yet.
It's always useful when your director's got a good singing voice and he can actually sing melodies to you. So, technically, he should be on the cue sheet. So
We know if he's got.
He'll get it.
Yeah, but how do we know?
He'll get it done.
And again, that's the mission theme, but it's just the second phrase of it.
Okay, we're ready.
And it was just this
Wait, 2-101.
You want to cut it
more relentless feeling of it.
When can we make a decision on this?
All right. We'll do it on 1.
Counting on 1?
Yes, 1. All right, stand by.
3,
2,
1. Now!
I love that silence. And this takes us all the way back to the beginning. This was an idea I had to make Our Loves Reduced, which is that piece of music that we've been hearing during the wedding and many of the other scenes. I just wanted to make a bigger, more orchestral, bolder version. That high note there was actually an idea from Jeff Foster and Matt Dunkley, who conducted the whole score, and it was layering the idea of trumpets with saxophones. So that ba-da, those high notes there, played in Air Studios. It just, instead of just being it's weird to describe. It's just instead of just that military sound that a trumpet would give, the saxophones slightly soften it. So that is an interesting colour. Always difficult writing the ends of a cue. It's like the beginning and the end is always a hard task, and that is one of them. The way that you exit that scene, you can leave it on a happy chord, a sad chord, or I always like trying to leave it on a question. If it sounds finished, the scene is completed, and that's not what you're seeing. You want to keep a sense of there's still questions.
Can you give us a few minutes, please? See you later, Doc.
So again, here is our low chords originating from our Love's Reduced. With a slight difference, we have a piano featuring on it.
Look at me. Look at me.
I think writing emotion was a big challenge on this movie, and I hope it's worked. I think that containing it and not necessarily going over the top with the instrumentation has made it feel more real. It has to us. You know, Tom's acting is it's just been amazing throughout the movie, and I think it's a different side to Ethan that we've seen in any of the other movies. And the job, well, to me, has just been there to support. It's not to overtake.
You're happy.
Very.
And we're going to be
I'm exactly where I should.
Coming up to a way of again, like many scenes, I say, wow, there's different ways to write it. But this is coming up to, and now this is the two worlds joining together musically. This is our high, Love's Reduced texture, and the low coming together. And again, very, very difficult to perform with live musicians. It goes against everything you kind of think. You constantly want to be playing it more emotion and bigger rides. But we had a long time just trying to do these natural kind of builds. That was the second time I went to set, Albert Bridge. And again, always exciting to see how it's actually done.
After what happened in Paris, we prefer to keep a low profile. And that closes your friend's account with British.
I think that night after they were filming it, I then started writing on the piece of music they're about to hear next. Which again was a hard one to write because this was the one opportunity to be faithful to Lalo's theme and not be too clever with it. Just present it in an honest way.
That way, I never have to.
Okay.
There's that little piano motif there, Andy Richards.
How close were we? The usual.
Usual.
And we're off into our famous trill on the flutes and bongo roll. So doing this version, there was I went back to the original and I thought I'll go to the original, straighten it out, and literally throw the kitchen sink at it. I have to be honest. It's every musician is playing on it. But the only difference compared to other movies is that we've got the choir. We've got the full kids choir, and then the men just sang Mission Impossible there. And we're coming up to them all singing it. In Latin, of course. That makes it just a bit more acceptable. Mission Impossible in Latin. What a way to end the movie. But that was the end of Mission Impossible Fallout. Thank you all for listening. I hope I gave a slight insight into the scoring process. But and also, I tell you what, one thing that always gets forgotten about is the whole end montage, which Cecile made and crafted very tastefully. And you'll see a lot of names from the music department mentioned and a lot not mentioned. But I hope you've got to see a little insight into the whole process of how a school comes together. So thank you all for listening.